Hello, I'm Andrew Nichols. This is CBC News Network. There is a new leader of the world's 1.4 billion Roman Catholics, and he is a stunning choice. For the first time in history, the Pope is American.
Habemus Papam.
A senior cardinal stood on a balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square to confirm the election of a new pope. In Latin, he announced, "We have a pope." Minutes later, the new pontiff stepped onto the balcony to introduce himself to the world.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
The crowd roared for more than 2 minutes before the new pope began to speak. He is 69-year-old Robert Francis Prevost from Chicago, but he spent many years working as a missionary in Peru and was made an archbishop there. For his papacy, he has taken the name Pope Leo XIV. He spoke in Latin saying, "Peace be with all of you," in his first words as the new pope. That was the moment thousands of people in St. Peter's Square and people watching all around the globe learned there was a new pope. Earlier, the crowd erupted as white smoke billowed from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, indicating the cardinals gathered inside had elected a new leader of the Roman Catholic Church. People in the square chanted "Viva il Papa," which means "Long live the Pope" in Italian. And this is a live look at St. Peter's Square inside the Vatican, a scene of jubilant celebration today, crammed with people for this historic event. Let's turn now to the CBC's Megan Williams. She joins us live from St. Peter's Square. So, Megan, a new pope has been chosen. What is the reaction like where you are?
Andrew, the reaction was just incredible. Because this was the fifth vote, which is not that too far into the conclave, the sense was, talking with Vatican observers, that it would be one of the two front runners, the Filipino Cardinal Tagle and the Italian Cardinal Peronin. So the idea that this is someone who was on the papabili list, the Pope contender list, but certainly nowhere near the top, is just extraordinary. I remember when Pope Francis was elected, it was a similar situation where people were saying, "Who is he?" And I think it was the same sense here. Certainly Vatican watchers had heard of him, but nobody was expecting an American Pope. And it really is sort of an extraordinary moment. And the sense I got from the crowds was just wrapping their heads around the fact that the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church is an American, which was something that many people thought would not happen for a number of reasons.
And tell me about that, Megan. Why is that a number of people just didn't see it? You know, I was trying to listen to the crowd as the Pope was announced. We certainly saw some cheers when he came out, but I was trying to gauge the reaction. What was your sense of the reaction?
I think it's a joyful reaction. I mean, the people who come here for this sort of historic event, they're not all Catholic, but many of them are Catholic. So I think the Catholics, the nuns and the priests, of which there were many in the crowd, were just delighted to have a new leader of their church. So there was the joy of that. You can hear cries of joy behind me for I'm not quite sure what, but so that's part of it. But again, it's quite extraordinary that it's an American. There was always this tacit agreement that because the United States geopolitically, that in a sense the Vatican would never have an American pope because there needed to be a kind of balance. I think the fact that Prevost is the first American, speaks to a couple of things. One, the geopolitical situation right now, particularly with President Donald Trump. Prevost, obviously, politically speaking, could not be more different than President Trump, but also the fact that he's an American Pope who spent many years in South America. He was the bishop in Peru of Chiclayo, which is in northwestern Peru, for many years. He has Peruvian citizenship, from what I have heard. He is very much along the lines of Pope Francis. I mean, the fact that during his inaugural greeting to Rome, he talked about synodality. That's church speak for the process that Francis initiated. Synodality were these global meetings where Francis wanted to bring in lay people, in other words, not just have the bishops run the show. So the fact that he mentioned that process, there are many cardinals in the Catholic Church who were against it, especially older cardinals. They didn't like it for a whole bunch of different reasons. So he seems very clearly signaling from the get-go that he is going to continue the Pope Francis project, even mentioning an open church, dialogue, the name he has chosen, Leo the 14th. Leo the 13th was a 19th century Pope who was very progressive and also spoke a lot about dialogue. So we're getting early signals of the direction that Pope Leo XIV, as he is now known, will be taking the church.
Megan, tell us more about what you mean when you say that this is a Pope who is very different from Donald Trump. What do you mean by that?
This is a Pope who is a pastor and who literally has gone out into the world, in this case Peru. He is a fierce advocate of migrants, again very much along the same lines as Pope Francis. He is also very concerned about climate change and is totally on board with Pope Francis's Laudato Si. That was the big document that came out shortly after Pope Francis was elected, in which the Canadian Cardinal Michael Cherney had a heavy hand in. So those key issues, particularly the concept. I mean, this is a cardinal who doesn't give very many interviews, so we don't know a lot about him. Everybody I've spoken with over the past month or so, when trying to get a sense of different cardinals, when it comes to Prevost, they all say he's very discreet. So in some ways, people don't know what he thinks about certain issues, like 2S LGBTQ issues. He could be more conservative than Pope Francis on that. But when it comes to migrants, climate change, and reaching out, going out into the world, I mean, Pope Francis spoke about going out to what he called the peripheries. This is a Pope who is very much on board with that message that Pope Francis had. One thing he did say, and I'm reading this quote, he said, "Our work is to enlarge the tent and to let everyone know they are welcome inside the church." It's what he said today, and it's what he said in the past. So this is someone we'll see what he does, because a lot of Pope Francis was elected and everybody thought he was going to be quite conservative, and he turned out to be one of the most progressive popes that the Catholic Church has had in decades. So we don't know what Prevost is going to do, but from what he's already signaled from the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square is that he is going to continue the work that Pope Francis did and emphasize similar things.
So let me ask you, Megan, so I think what you're saying to me when people are trying to figure out is if he's more of a conservative or more of a progressive pope, or what he will be. You mentioned migrants, that on that issue he's definitely softer than Donald Trump, but on some of those other social issues which have really dominated a lot of the discussion around the Roman Catholic Church in the year 2025, do we have a better sense of where he will guide the church?
We don't, but again, speaking to a lot of Vatican observers, very few of them know Prevost. Even though he's been appointing bishops for a few years now, he's a very reserved person and he holds his cards close to his chest. So he's certainly, I wouldn't call him conservative within the definition of the church, but he was obviously someone not progressive or radical or whatever word you want to use enough for the conservatives to vote for him. I mean, he had to get 89 votes. So there's something reassuring enough about him to the traditionalists or the conservatives within the synod, within the conclave, to have voted for him. It's, when we use the word progressive or conservative in politics, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing within the Catholic Church. But the sense I get in talking to Vatican observers is that probably on issues like LGBTQ+, or some of the things that maybe Francis, the small changes he made with regards to women, that the next person, someone like Prevost, may not touch that. He may just sort of leave that as it is. He may not advance a sense of welcome and inclusion. But there's a sense with somebody like him that he's not going to take things backwards. And again, he got enough votes, and what many people said they were looking for was someone to consolidate the changes that Pope Francis had brought in. So somebody who is advancing the important issues for Pope Francis, going to the peripheries, inclusion, folding in more the global South, but at the same time, who would not be perhaps as disruptive as some people experienced Pope Francis to be.
Megan, let me ask you this question, because I think it may have been on the minds of the people there. I don't know, I'm not there, and that is with Donald Trump.
Andrew, if you're talking to me, I can't hear you.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
Megan, have you got me? Megan, it's Andrew in Toronto.
I can hear you now,
okay,
yes.
Okay, great. My question to you is this, is that given that I know Donald Trump is the president of the United States, Donald Trump looms large on the global stage right now. An American president, many people in this country have very negative feelings. Many people in much of the world have negative feelings towards the American president. I'm wondering if the world needs an American pope at this moment.
I mean, that's a fascinating question, Andrew, and that's why I think this is such an electrifying choice in a way. He is so clearly standing for exactly the opposite things that Donald Trump stands for. And the other interesting thing about this choice as an American is a lot of the American bishops have been very conservative. There are like a handful of them now who used to be papal contenders who aren't, but who really strongly opposed Pope Francis and sent him letters firmly, demanding to know, to have explanations for certain moves that he made to make the church more inclusive. So it's an interesting choice in a group of bishops that tend to be very, very conservative and to focus on cultural wars. I mean, the American bishops have focused on abortion. They focused on trying to block same-sex marriage. They're very aligned with some of the things that Trump does. Not migration, I should say, but certainly on those other cultural issues. And I don't know exactly where Prevost lies on those issues, but he's certainly not one of them, and he's not one of these people who has clearly engaged in these cultural wars. He's very discreet. So it will be fascinating to follow him in the next year or so to see where exactly he stands. And again, there are a number of popes that get elected, like John Paul II. He seemed very progressive when he was elected. He turned out to be extremely conservative. Benedict XVI, that was one case where you knew what you were getting, a conservative pope. Pope Francis was not seen as especially progressive, his own history, and yet he brought in one of the most progressive papacies that we've seen in a very long time. So we will be watching him, and I think you kind of just have to wait for a year or so to see who exactly you're dealing with.
Megan, I know you were not in the conclave, of course not. There was only 133 cardinals inside. But how do you think this happened? I mean, was this pope, this new pope, on anyone's list? How could this have happened? Have you started to give some thought to some of the plays that may have made this occur?
Absolutely, Andrew. What clearly happened is the two front runners, Pietro Parolin, who is the Vatican Secretary of State, and the very charismatic Cardinal Tagle, Luis Tagle, the Filipino, neither of them could reach enough votes to kind of gain momentum. And that's clearly what happened, because neither of them stood on that balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square. And so usually, in the first vote, for instance, the last conclave, there were 24 or so cardinals who received first votes. And then everybody, kind of huddles and figures out who they're going to get behind. And so that, the two votes this morning leaks will come out eventually, Andrew. I don't know, but my guess is, based on the result, that those two contenders just didn't have the momentum and didn't have enough votes. And so Prevost came up the middle. Now, there might have been someone else who came up the middle with him. Clearly, people voted for him, and certainly he got enough votes that some of the more traditional conservative, like a lot of the African bishops are quite conservative on social issues, they voted for him. But we'll know more later.
We'll know more later. Megan, I was, as we were watching, I don't know enough, so we heard him speak in Latin and Italian, I believe. I mean, the moment, and it will happen, where we hear an American pope speak with a mother tongue of English, and American English sounding kind of similar to you and I. I mean, that will be quite a moment for the English-speaking Catholics of the world, but just for the world generally, don't you think?
Absolutely. This is a multilingual man. He's obviously speaks his Italian. When I was listening to his Italian, it has a Spanish accent. So he has spent so much time of his life speaking in Spanish. And his background is also Italian, Spanish, and French. So he may well speak French as well. But yes, very strange to have a pope who speaks North American English. This was something that a lot of people said would never happen. They do call him the least American of Americans, but nonetheless, he's from Chicago, so he understands American culture, and that could be a very positive thing in dealing with Donald Trump as well, President Trump, and trying to influence him in some way. I know President Trump congratulated him already, but it's a very interesting configuration to have an American as Pope.
It sure is. Megan, we will let you news gather, get a sense more of the crowd around you. You've had a chance, but you've been kind of busy talking with us. We appreciate your reporting very much, but for now, thank you. That is Megan Williams live in Vatican City.